get our calories from three main sources: proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. Say, for example, you were to eat like a chicken breast or something like that. So let's say it was, I don't know, 100 calories worth of chicken breast, which I think is a lot of chicken breast. Even though it is 100 calories worth of chicken breast, there's something called the thermic effect. The thermic effect is described as the energy required to metabolize certain nutrients. The thermic effect of protein is 25 to 30%. Therefore, 100 calories of protein ends up after the thermic effect being more so like 70 to 75 calories versus 100. You see, so you lose 25 to 30 calories from heat. This is what you can do about your health, the podcast about how you can make your body healthy, strong, fit, and inhospitable to disease. I'm Sean McClennan, your host. I'm a certified personal trainer. I am an author and a health and fitness enthusiast, as I like to call myself. Thank you for joining me today. The information on this podcast is based on personal research, experience, and opinion, and is not meant to be a substitute for advice from a doctor or physician. You are advised to consult your doctor or physician before making any changes to your lifestyle. My featured product is my gold level Patreon group. If you go to patreon.com/Sean B2B Fitness and join at the gold level, you will receive access to my library of mini workouts, which are a series of body weight workouts you can do in your own home to sculpt, tone, build muscle. Again, in the privacy of your own home. You also have access to my 8 weeks to transform your diet and your health fat loss workbook in PDF form. You'll have access to ask questions that will be featured on my weekly webinars that I do on Saturday mornings. Exclusive access to that and more. So if you're interested in that and you want to support what we're doing here, then go to patreon.com/Sean B2B Fitness and support. So I appreciate that in advance. And make sure you go check that out too. All right. Now, let's talk about what we're talking about here today, which is the fact that a calorie is not a calorie. A calorie is not a calorie. In other words, just because you consume X amount of calories doesn't mean that you can catch yourself going and drinking, 500 calories worth of, soda and think that's going to be the same as 500 calories worth of leafy greens. It's not the same. Now, this is very important to understand because we've been conditioned to think about everything in terms of calories. And so therefore we think we can just put anything in our bodies. And as long as we get around a certain calorie quota, we're good. But that is an oversimplified way of looking at food. Now, it's not to say that there's not anything valid to the whole calorie conversation, but this, I'm convinced, is the reason why a lot of people are dealing with issues where they're eating, they feel like they're not eating too many calories, but they're still catching themselves having a problem with losing weight, or things like that. And again, so in a nutshell, and I'm gonna go into the details here, but in a nutshell, the reason why that happens, the reason why a calorie is not a calorie, the reason why sometimes people have issues where they're not eating a lot of food, but then they're still, not able to lose weight or finding themselves even gaining weight. The reason why is because of the effect the food has on the body, or the way that the food is processed, different kind of calories are processed in the body. So think about this. We get our calories from three main sources: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Okay. All you got calories from protein, calories from carbs, calories from fat. Okay. Now, all a calorie is a unit of energy. It's a unit of energy, um, that the body uses. Okay. Now, however, whenever you consume, and keep this in mind as well, that we have different kind of foods that we categorize in different kind of ways. Like proteins, we tend to think of as like meats and whatnot. Of course, you have some high protein vegetables as well. Um, then you have more carbohydrate heavy foods, which we just call carbohydrates. Um, stuff like potatoes and rice and other grains, stuff like that. Then you have like fat heavy foods, like um avocados or coconuts, coconut oil, or even like fats, animal fats. Now it's important to kind of understand that there is some overlap. Just because a food is heavy in carbs doesn't mean it has no protein. Okay, there's even protein in like leafy greens and stuff like that. It's of a different it's of a different type, but it's still protein found in plant foods. There may be, there's fats and protein heavy foods like meats and whatnot. There is a decent amount of carbs in beans, which a lot of times is associated with protein. And so there's overlap there. But anyway, just for the sake of simplifying for this podcast, you know, we'll label some foods as carbs if they're carb heavy, proteins if they're protein heavy, fats if they're fat heavy. Now consider this, and if you really get this, you'll see how this stuff works and how it's more complex than we like to make it. And I heard this on the podcast, actually referencing the episode of this podcast I recorded yesterday. Consider protein. Say, for example, you were to eat like a chicken breast or something like that, and chicken breast has, I don't know, 30 calories. I don't know typically how many they have, because to be honest, I don't count calories. I really never have. Um, but say 30 calories worth of chicken breast. Or let's kind of like make the number a little bit more simple for the sake of um the math working out. So let's say it was, I don't know, 100 calories worth of chicken breast, which I think is a lot of chicken breast. Now, even though it is 100 calories worth of chicken breast, by the time it comes to, like the storing of it and all that kind of stuff in your body, technically you can still store unused protein calories as fat somewhere along the way. But there's something called the thermic effect. The thermic effect is described as the energy required to process, to metabolize certain nutrients. Okay. And therm has to do with heat. So essentially, what happens is the thermic effect of protein is 25 to 30%, according to healthline.com. And I'll include that link in there too. But it's 25 to 30%. And so what that means is, especially compared to fats and carbohydrates, when protein is metabolized by the body, it's kind of inefficient. It's kind of there's a lot of heat loss because there's a lot of it requires more to process protein. So like literally 25 to 30% of those calories are lost as heat. Therefore, 100 calories of protein ends up after all that, after the thermic effect, being more so like, what's that, like 750, what's that, 250 to 300, so that'd be 700 to 750 calories versus, I mean, no, I mean to say 770 to 75 calories versus 100. You see, so you lose 25 to 30 calories from heat because it takes a lot to digest protein. It takes more to digest protein. Now, say for example, you were consuming 100 calories of carbohydrate. Carbohydrate has a thermic effect of 6 to 8%. So that means that 100 calories of carbohydrate out of those 100 calories, then you're going to lose 6 to 8 calories from heat. And so you still got, what's that? That's going to be 92 to 96 calories left still that the body uses, okay, or stores. Now the thermic effect of fat is even lower, 2 to 3%. So that means out of 100 calories of fat, then you're still going to have 97, 98 calories left over that your body's going to use after the other 2 or 3 are dissipated as heat. Okay. So I'm saying that to say calories are not created the same in that way. So, like, you consuming more calories from protein, a lot of that is going to be lost as heat. Now, I'm not saying that it's necessary that we eat high protein. You kind of still have to be a little balanced in that because um for healthy reasons. But saying that to say it takes more to process protein. So it's not going to be the same as processing, carbohydrate. Not going to be the same as processing like a soda or something like that. Now, let's go a little bit further. Another thing with proteins is that proteins actually help you to feel satiated more quickly. They help you to feel more full. So if you eat a steak, you eat eggs, things like that, versus eating like a donut, then it's going to help you to feel full quicker. So think about that. Combine that with the whole thermic effect. So you consume whatever calories, however many calories you can consume. A lot of that ends up getting dissipated as heat. And then you don't even need as much protein anyway, excuse me, to feel full. You see? So again, whereas you consume a donut, you consume orange juice or something like that, it's going to take a lot to feel full from anything like that. Anything that's high carb like that. It's going to take a lot. Okay. So you see, it's a lot easier to consume more carbohydrate than it is, for example, to consume more protein. All right. So consider that a calorie is not a calorie. It's not. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about fat. So now it's important to say this as well that fat does fat. Well, here, let's go back. So there's this big fallacy back when I was growing up, when I was a little kid, that fat was bad and you eat fat, you get fat and stuff like that. But it is not that simple. It's just not. It isn't that simple. Now, fat can get eventually stored as fat, depending on your energy levels. I mean, your energy, how much energy you burn and whatnot. That is true. However, it's a much more extended process for the fat to come from dietary fat, to get all the way broken down into the fatty acids that get stored in your fat cells. But the thing with that also to understand is your body's go-to source for energy, if it's available, is carbohydrates. So your body stores a lot of carbs in your liver, in your muscles, and of course in your fat as well. And so as long as carbs are available, your body is going to go to using those. It's not going to go to using its fat. It's not going to. You see? That's because the carbs are a more quickly available energy source. Fats are available as well. When I say fats now, let's talk about dietary fat. Dietary fat becomes usable after a while, but not as quickly as carbs are. Okay? And so also to keep this in mind, if carbs are a more quickly available energy sources like right on hand to be used immediately, then your fat doesn't really get used as much until those carbs are like depleted. You see what I'm saying? Like, and those carbs are kind of out of the way. Now your body can go to using its storage. You see? So now when it comes to consuming fat, the fat that you intake can get stored eventually through a long drawn out process as fat, but you also have to kind of think about it. If you are consuming a diet that is kind of low in carbohydrate but higher in fat, then that is going to also mean that your body is going to more readily use fat as its energy source. You see, because the carbohydrate is not available. So if you consume more fat, your body is still having to go to your fat to get energy to use. You see what I'm saying? So keep that in mind. Now let's talk about carbs. Now, even in all this, I want to make sure it's understood that carbs are not evil. It's just energy. Now, there's different quality carbs. A lot of the carbs that have our hand on it, human hands on it, are like absolute junk. There's nothing good about them. A lot of that stuff, like the donuts and the cakes and the drinks and all that kind of stuff are like almost totally devoid of any nutrients, and it's such concentrated sugar is wreaking havoc on the body. Listen to my last podcast on that. But carbohydrate, like I said, is a lot more quickly available as an energy source. The issue that we have, and we've been programmed to do this, the issue that we have in our society is that we made high carbohydrate foods like our main source. So, like, literally, we're flooding the body with carbohydrates. So, your body never has a reason to go to its own fat storage. It never does. So, then on top of that, because you're flooding your body with carbohydrates, your insulin goes up. Insulin, and I heard a guy on a podcast describe it like this yesterday. Insulin is called the fat storage hormone because what happens is when you consume a whole lot of carbohydrates, all the glucose comes into your bloodstream, and your body needs to use that. It doesn't need to stay in the bloodstream because it literally harms your body whenever it remains in the bloodstream. It harms your blood vessels. So your insulin goes up, and your body is wanting to maintain like a balance with your blood sugar levels. So your insulin goes up when your blood glucose goes up, and it helps to bring that glucose down because it's bringing the glucose into your body's cells, including and perhaps especially your fat cells. Okay. And so remember, that fat will not be accessed as long as you readily have carbohydrates on hand. Okay. Now, especially when you consume like these really, really simple carbohydrates that are in junk food and whatnot, you have like overwhelmed your body with carbs because that stuff, it doesn't take much for it to process, and it very quickly and easily gets stored as fat. So you figure a lot of us pancreas is like working like crazy, shuttling it in, and so we're just making ourselves fatter and fatter and fatter, and we're not allowing ourselves to access our fat stores. Another thing with carbohydrates, as I kind of hinted a little earlier, um, is that they're the least satiating, and it's very easy to consume a whole lot of carbohydrate. Think about how it is to go to Krispy Kreme whenever the hot sign is on, and um, eat several of those. If I eat 3 of those, I'm still wanting more. I could probably eat at least a half dozen before it's been too much sugar for me. But I don't do that. I don't do that. Um, but you understand what I mean if you had Krispy Kremes before, or if you like juice or you like soda or whatever, it's easy to consume a whole lot of that, and we just don't understand how much we're overwhelming our bodies with this sugar that we can't possibly use, and so our bodies use whatever they do. And keep also in mind that the average American is very inactive. Okay, so you're not going to be needing a whole lot of that stuff with your muscles, and your liver can only take so much sugar in. So then all that stuff is getting shuttled into your fat. I say all that to say, as I wrap this up, that a calorie is not a calorie. If you have a diet that leans less toward the carbs, especially the simple carbohydrates that are found in junk food, even also, including the ones like in grains and whatnot, because we still oftentimes consume too many carbohydrates overall. But I want to say it's especially those simple ones that are in junk food. When your diet leans toward that, then even if you're not consuming a whole lot of calories and whatnot, what you have to consider is your body really can't access its fat stores that much. It can't, because you're always putting those carbs in place. Okay. So if you're dealing with an issue where you still like, but I don't really eat that much, what are you eating? Like, what is your diet comprising of? Because if it's still leaning toward the carbs, then it's still gonna make it kind of hard for you to like experience weight loss. Okay, it's gonna make it hard to experience that because you're keeping your carb stores high. And once you kind of shift your diet more so toward um more so toward like protein, fats, then it's going to be easier to lose weight. It's going to be easier to lose weight. But keep in mind, it's not even all about that, because you also want to make sure that your pancreas is not always working and working and working, because you increase your insulin resistance to lead toward diabetes. Not only that, have all these high sugar levels in your bloodstream, and that can be problematic and damaging to your bodily tissues. So it's not just about the weight by any means. Please listen to my previous podcast to kind of get more on that. Okay, so hopefully this helps you if you've been feeling like you're not eating a lot, but you're still gaining weight, or your weight is not budging. Okay. All right. Let's let that be it. If this is helpful to you, comment, share it with somebody that you know, or who would benefit from it. Subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure you do that. Click the subscribe. You don't have to smash it, as everybody always says. Um, but then also, check out patreon.com/Sean B2B Fitness. And like I said, check out my gold level patron group. When I do my webinars on Saturday mornings, you have the opportunity to submit your personal health and fitness questions that you have on your journey, and I'll answer them live on in my webinars. You'll also have access to those webinars when you become a gold level member. You have access to my library of 10 to 15 minute mini workouts, body weight exercise routines you can do in your own home starting today. You have access to my 8-week fat loss workbook that you can use to help you to change your diet to a healthier diet, and more. So make sure you join, y'all. I love to have you on there, and let's let that be it. Remember that your doctor is not responsible for your health. You are. God bless you.